What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Conor McGregor seemingly misses USADA deadline to compete in 2023. From the looks of things, former UFC champ Conor McGregor has officially missed the June 16th deadline to re-enroll in the USADA testing pool. With the UFC's final pay-per-view card of the year set to take place December 16th at the T-Mobile Arena, McGregor would have had to re-enroll in the testing pool by June 16th in order to fulfill the necessary 6 months of testing before being declared eligible to return. Despite that, there could still be a glimmer of hope for fans who wanted to see McGregor return to action by the end of the year. As reporter Aaron Bronstetter pointed out, the USADA 6-month testing window begins on the day a fighter re-enrolls in the program, not based on the day they submit their first sample. Given that, it's entirely possible that McGregor has re-enrolled in the program but has yet to submit a testing sample. Unfortunately, there's no way to know either way given that USADA has yet to reply to inquiries to various outlets regarding his status. What is known is that per USADA's official database, McGregor has yet to submit a sample. Of course, there's still the possibility that the UFC issues McGregor an exemption like they did for Brock Lesnar prior to UFC 200. At the time, Lesnar underwent a month of testing prior to the fight, giving fans hope that the same could be true for McGregor. As former title challenger Chael Sonnen recently pointed out, the UFC grants exemptions more frequently than fans realize. For example, if a fighter who wasn't previously with the UFC steps in on short notice to save a fight after a fighter pulls out, they're issued an exemption and as a result, aren't subject to the 6 months of testing beforehand like someone on the UFC roster would be. Given that, there still seems to be some optimism among fans that McGregor winds up returning for the UFC's December pay-per-view. Another popular theory gaining traction among fans that longtime MMA Reporter of the Year Ariel Helwani proposed was that McGregor could instead look to return to the octagon for UFC 300, which is expected to take place in April of 2024, to complete his trilogy with Nate Diaz. With plenty of theories on the table and little clarity, only time will tell what the future holds for McGregor. UFC updates. Nevada has officially granted the UFC 5 more permits for events in 2023. According to a report from MMA Junkie, the UFC is now cleared to hold several more events between now and the end of the year, with some taking place at the UFC Apex and others taking place at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. The first event is scheduled to take place on September 16th at the T-Mobile Arena. The card currently doesn't have a main event scheduled for the bout. However, UFC President Dana White has stated that the card is purposely scheduled to coincide with Mexican Independence Day after he admitted the UFC dropped the ball by not hosting a Cinco de Mayo card. The next 3 events are set to take place at the UFC Apex, with the first newly sanctioned event taking place on September 23rd and the second of the 3 announced Apex cards taking place on October 7th. Currently, neither of the 2 events have headliners announced yet. The third Apex event, which will take place on November 4th, is expected to be headlined by a heavyweight clash between Curtis Blades and Jailton Almeida. Last but certainly not least, we have the previously mentioned card at the T-Mobile Arena, set to take place on December 16th. The event currently doesn't have any announced fights, with fans also left to speculate as to the headliner. This week also saw 2 fights announced for upcoming cards, with Jeremiah Wells and Carlston Harris set to compete at UFC Nashville on August 5th, and Nora Cornoli set to fight Jocelyn Edwards at UFC Paris on September 2nd. Stay tuned for updates as they become available. Sean O'Malley's wild suggestion for the UFC. With 2-division champion Amanda Nunes officially retired from the sport and removed from the UFC's rankings, many are wondering about the future of the women's bantamweight division. So far, Juliana Pena is expected to fill one side of the title fight to determine the new champion. However, there's plenty of debate surrounding who she should compete against. At the same time, it sounds as though the women's featherweight division is likely to be shut down according to Dana White, given that the promotion has been unable to build the division's roster in recent years. As Sugar Sean O'Malley theorized, the UFC could go another route, questioning whether the promotion could split the men and women into 2 different sub-promotions. During a recent episode of his Timbo Sugar Show, O'Malley questioned,
what if there was a
WUFC,
women's UFC? What if they had their own program? Would it last? Would they be able to sell pay-per-views? Would they be able to sell out arenas? I'm just asking.
Made them anyway.
But what if it was the WUFC? It's still the UFC. It's still Dana. It's still UFC pushing these fights, promoting them. Would it last?
While the UFC has shown no indication that they would even consider splitting fighters into 2 sub-promotions based on gender, the situation sparked quite the debate on the show. O'Malley argued that there simply aren't as many can't-miss fights among WMMA fighters as there are among male fighters, and their fights generally aren't as exciting either. The comments were quickly shot down by his friend, who used Joanna Jędrzejczyk as an example to disprove his theory. In addition to sparking quite the debate, it seems the comments have also landed O'Malley in hot water among MMA fans. Before we continue, make sure you give that like button some love, and be sure to subscribe to the MMA Zone for all of the latest news. Francis Ngannou thinks the UFC is conspiring against him. Former UFC heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou has been seeking out a crossover bout with Tyson Fury for quite some time now. Prior to parting ways with the UFC, Ngannou was aiming to compete against Fury. However, the UFC never showed interest in promoting a clash with Fury the same way they did for Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather. Since hitting free agency, Ngannou has continued to hold out hope for a bout with Fury. However, it now appears that the UFC is looking to book Fury a crossover fight with heavyweight champion Jon Jones. As Fury recently revealed, he's actually received an offer from the UFC to compete against Jones. However, there's been no further news on the negotiations since then. During a recent appearance at PFL 5, Ngannou spoke to media members about the situation, theorizing that the UFC could be conspiring to cut his legs out from under him by showing interest in working with Fury now.
That was never an idea when I was in the UFC, and then now that I'm not in the UFC, I think everything is all about like how to take down Ngannou. But Ngannou stands up. Nothing's going to take me. I'm going to be here for a while.
With Ngannou's sights still set on boxing, it'll be interesting to see how he juggles his PFL debut next year and a potential boxing debut. Do you think Tyson Fury will ever wind up competing against an MMA fighter in a crossover bout? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Chael Sonnen makes bold prediction for UFC 290. Chael Sonnen is going on record as saying that the UFC 290 main event clash between Alexander Volkanovski and Yair Rodriguez has all the feelings of a massive upset. While Volkanovski still sits as the overwhelming betting favorite heading into the bout, many believe that the unique puzzle Rodriguez presents is enough to fluster even the former pound-for-pound kingpin. After Volkanovski proclaimed Rodriguez as the most dangerous opponent he's ever fought, given his unorthodox striking and dynamic kicks, Sonnen went on to claim that the bout has all the makings of an upset. During a recent video for his YouTube channel, Sonnen spoke about the fight, saying,
I am a little worried about that fight because that fight has all the feelings of an upset. Like every upset that you have has the same ingredients. And more times than not, when one fighter is not focused on a fight, another one is. Bad things happen.
How do you see the fight playing out in July? Drop your predictions in the comment section below. Gilbert Burns gives update on shoulder injury. At UFC 288, Gilbert Burns put the #1 contender status that he earned by defeating Jorge Masvidal on the line to compete against Belal Muhammad on short notice. Unfortunately for the former welterweight title challenger, the move didn't work in his favor. Early on in the fight, Burns suffered a shoulder injury that prevented him from using one of his arms effectively. As a result, he wound up coming up short on the judges' scorecards and losing his spot in line for a crack at the welterweight title. After the fight, it was revealed that Burns managed to avoid surgery, and after a 2 to 3 month recovery, would hopefully be back in the octagon. When one fan tagged Burns in a tweet asking how the arm was doing, Durinho responded by saying that it's slowly getting better, and while improving, he still has a lot of work to do. When asked in a follow-up tweet whether or not fans can expect to see him back in the octagon this year, Burns replied stating that he hopes so. While there's no targeted date for his return, who would you like to see Burns compete against when he does return to the octagon? Play matchmaker and drop your thoughts in the comment section below. And now for a breaking news story of the day. We have Charles Oliveira getting accused of taking steroids. On a recent Instagram post, Charles said, "Bigger and stronger." A lot of people have been commenting that I look bigger. That's because I am. Since taking MHP products over the past few years, I am bigger and stronger. Fans are speculating in the comments that Charles is on steroids. One fan said, LMAO, my man got a hold of the secret juice from Paulo Costa and is now built like a god. And another fan said, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it because I feel like everyone knows, but just loves Charles as do I, so won't mention it. As soon as he started putting together the insane win streak, he increased in power, durability, and size. Bro hopped on the juice, but so is 60% of the UFC. What do you think? Is Charles Oliveira on the secret juice, or do you believe it's the vitamins? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell to stay up to date with MMA news every day. Here are the top comments from yesterday's video. Honestly sucks to see Chito fighting Henry. I'm excited for the fight, but Chito is my favorite fighter, and honestly, I think Henry wins that fight. Khamzat's plans don't really matter if he never gets to get in the octagon. Khamzat has officially become an anomaly of the UFC. Islam, come on, you barely survived the fight with Alexander. How can you say that you beat him? And those were the top comments from yesterday's video. If you want to be featured on our next video, make sure to leave a comment and don't forget to check out yesterday's video in case you missed it.